I've always loved horror. Movies, books, stories, all of it. Since I was a kid, I've devoured anything that tried to scare me. But when it comes to horror games, that was a completely different story. Games hit me harder than any movie ever could. A horror movie plays out whether I cover my eyes or not, but in game, it's my hands on the controller, my decision to open the next door, my choice to move forward when everything is screaming to turn back. They terrified me in a way no jump scare on a screen ever did. And that's exactly what makes them such a perfect medium for horror. The immersion is total and the fear is personal. For years though, I thought I understood the formula. I thought I had horror games figured out. The scariest ones, I believed, were the ones that left you completely helpless. No weapons, no way to fight back. That's what Outlast taught me, that's what Amnesia drilled into me. Even Soma, which remains one of my favorite games ever, leaned into that philosophy. These games were masters of helplessness, and they convinced me that was the heart of video game horror. If a developer ever gave me a weapon, I figured the tension would evaporate instantly. Guns meant power, knives meant control, weapons meant the loop was broken. You could defend yourself, and therefore you couldn't really be scared anymore. Well, then I played Resident Evil 7, and everything I thought I knew about horror got flipped upside down.
Welcome to the family, son.
Before diving into why Resident Evil 7 scared me so deeply, it's worth revisiting the games that shaped my old beliefs. Take Outlast. This game is basically one long nightmare of hide and seek. You play as Miles Upshur, an investigative journalist trapped inside a twisted asylum filled with deranged homicidal patients. Your only tool is a camcorder that doubles as a night vision flashlight. The problem? The batteries barely last, so you're constantly scavenging for replacements. The entire game boils down to a loop. An enemy spots you, you run, you slam a door behind you, you dive into a locker or under a bed, and you hold your breath until the coast is clear. It's terrifying at first, the panic of hearing heavy footsteps pounding down a hallway as you scramble for cover. But after a few hours, the rhythm becomes predictable. You learn how long enemies patrol. You learn that yes, the bed is safe. You learn that batteries are abundant enough that you can practically keep your night vision on forever. Eventually, the game's terror fades into routine. Amnesia: The Dark Descent works in a similar way. Instead of a camcorder, you got a lantern. Instead of batteries, you burn oil. But the loop is nearly identical. Run, hide, wait, repeat. The monsters are scary, but once you've seen their tricks a few times, the fear dulls. Helplessness is effective, but only for so long. And then there's Soma, which is, in my opinion, one of the greatest horror experiences ever made. It's more psychological than the other two, weaving existential dread into its story, but mechanically it still leans on that helplessness model. You sneak past monsters, you hide when they spot you, and you pray they lose interest. I adore Soma for its story, but even I'll admit the gameplay loop shows its seams over time. These games taught me to equate helplessness with fear. For years I thought the inability to fight back was the key to making horror work. And then Resident Evil 7 came along to prove me dead wrong. From the opening minutes, Resident Evil 7 feels familiar. Ethan Winters, the game's protagonist, is driving down a lonely road, heading toward a decaying plantation in rural Louisiana. He's following a lead on his wife Mia, who's been missing for 3 years. His hope is fragile, but he pushes forward anyway. When you first step out of the car and approach the house, it's classic horror imagery. Strange objects scattered like warnings, shadows moving just out of reach, The decrepit shell of a building waiting to swallow you whole. Inside, the environment tells its own chilling story. Rotten meat left on the table, dead bird stuff in a microwave, grime caked on every surface. It's not just abandoned, it feels inhabited, as if something or someone is still lurking in the filth, and somehow, unnervingly, the power still works. Within the first hour, you've got a knife, shortly after, a pistol, eventually a shotgun, a flamethrower, even more. Resident Evil arms you far earlier and more consistently than most horror games I'd played. And yet, instead of killing the tension, the weapons magnify it. Why? Because Resident Evil 7 isn't about helplessness, it's about fragility. Every bullet matters, every resource is limited, miss a shot and the consequences isn't just wasted ammo. It could mean being defenseless when the next monster appears. Healing items are scarce, forcing you to decide when an injury is worth treating and when it's better to limp forward, praying you won't need the first aid med later. Weapons don't make you feel safe, they make you feel responsible, and that's far scarier. One of Resident Evil 7's cruelest tricks is how it weaponizes the illusion of control. Holding a pistol lulls you into thinking you're strong, capable, maybe even safe. But then Jack Baker smashes through a wall behind you, and suddenly your false sense of security shatters. Or Margaret comes spider walking through a window with a swarm of insects, and you realize your carefully planned strategy means nothing. Unlike Outlast or Amnesia, where hiding as a guaranteed safety net, Resident Evil 7 constantly reminds you that nothing is permanent. Every room, every corridor, every encounter is a gamble. Think you've cleared an area? Think again. Think you've outsmarted Jack? He'll be back, more relentless than before. This unpredictability makes the game terrifying in a way pure helplessness never did for me. Helplessness is simple, you run or you hide. Fragile control is complex, you constantly second guess your choice, and when those choices backfire, the fear multiplies. Another part of what makes Resident Evil 7 so effective is how it leans into anticipation. Fear doesn't just live in the moment of confrontation, it thrives in the waiting. You don't know if danger is around the corner or if the house itself is simply toying with you. The uncertainty gnaws at you, long before an enemy ever appears. The first-person perspective makes it even more personal. You don't see Ethan's face, you are Ethan. Every shadow feels like it's meant for you, every door feels like it's waiting to betray you. And then there's the pacing. Resident Evil doesn't bombard you with constant enemies. Instead, it balances silence and chaos, letting you breathe just long enough to drop your guard. And then the next fight comes. It hits harder because you've been lulled into a fragile sense of calm. The brilliance of this structure is that it keeps you engaged. In Outlast, once you know the rhythm, the fear fades. In Resident Evil 7, the rhythm never feels stable, and when you think you know what's coming, the game shifts the rules. The garage fight with Jack is one. I thought I was clever, keeping my distance, saving ammo, waiting for the right shots. And then Jack grabbed the car keys, hopped behind the wheel, and started trying to run me down in the claustrophobic space of a garage. Suddenly, my careful plan disintegrated. I wasn't clever, I panicked, scrambling, desperate, trying to survive. Basically everything with Margaret was disgusting because I hate bugs, but her greenhouse fight was another. I thought I'd locked down her patterns, learned when to strike and when to retreat. Then, she spider climbed out of sight, dropping on me from above like something out of a nightmare. And then there's Luca's trap-filled birthday party, a room wired to explode if you make a wrong move. Every puzzle a ticking time bomb. These moments were amazing, because I wasn't helpless. I had tools, but those tools weren't enough. Every encounter felt like a gamble, and every wrong choice was on me. Looking back, the difference between Amnesia and Outlast type horror games and Resident Evil 7 feels like the difference between being a passenger and being a driver. In Outlast or Amnesia, you're along for the ride. The rules aren't set, you can't fight back, so your only option is to hide. It's scary, but the simplicity limits its staying power. Once you know the tricks, the fear fades. In Resident Evil 7, you're the driver, you have options, but every option has consequences. Fight, flee, or conserve resources. It's always a gamble. That complexity keeps the fear alive far longer than helplessness ever could. It's the same reason I appreciate games like The Evil Within. Like Resident Evil 7, they give you weapons, but make every encounter costly. Ammo is tight, enemies are relentless, and your survival depends on constantly weighing risks. It's not about being powerless, it's about never being comfortable. Playing Resident Evil 7 was a turning point. It forced me to rethink what makes horror effective. It showed me that horror isn't about stripping you bare, it's about loading you up with tools that never quite guarantee survival. It's about making you believe you're safe, then yanking the illusion away. It's about forcing you to make choices where every outcome feels dangerous. Helplessness is one kind of fear, but fragile control, that's another level. Now, when I approach horror games, I don't just look for monsters jumping out of the dark. I look for games that make me feel the weight of every decision. I want tension, unpredictability, that constant nagging doubt that I've made the wrong call. Soma will probably always be my favorite horror game because of its story. It nails psychological horror in a way nothing else has for me. But Resident Evil 7 is the game that reshaped how I think about the genre. It redefined horror, not as helplessness, but as responsibility. And that's the lesson I'll carry with me into every horror game I play from now on. Of course, this is just my opinion. There are other games before Resident Evil 7 that actually gave you weapons. It was just the first one I played. Anyways, I hope you guys liked this video. It would help me out a lot if you liked and subscribed. Thanks so much.